to my channel. I'm Jess. Wanted to talk to you guys about Hermes leathers today. I got a special request to do this video, so I thought why not share with you guys my thoughts on different leathers. And I know that personal preference for different leathers is well, different for everybody, but I think it also a lot has to do with where you live, what colors you like, what styles you like will depend on what your leather preferences are, because I find for some bags I prefer the look of leathers in certain bags and certain color combinations compared to others. So yeah, for me, I find that it just depends on the bag and the color as to what leather I think looks best. Because I live in Melbourne, I tend to avoid leathers that don't do well in the rain. So for example, I don't tend to like wearing box calf leather, so it's something going forward I probably wouldn't invest my money in, because I know box calf is quite sensitive to rain. I used to have a Chamonix leather Kelly 28, which that leather is quite sensitive to water, and it often does like sometimes just rain in Melbourne, which, you know, I always kind of bring like an extra bag to put my bag in or something like that. But, you know, sometimes just like most of the time a few drops will definitely get on my bag. So I try and avoid leathers that don't do that well in the rain. Exotics, you ideally don't want to take them in the rain as well. Not that that's really in my price point anyway, but even, you know, I've seen that sometimes it's advised not to put crocodile in the rain. Ostrich, I've heard, is a little bit more durable to rain. It does often dry and it ends up being not too bad. And then even leathers like Byrrhenia leather are really great for rain because they already have like a natural patina to them, and the look of Byrrhenia is supposed to be a little bit more rustic and aged, and it goes dark over time. So if you get a Byrrhenia bag wet, it often looks quite bad at first, but then it will dry and it will just dry and you won't even notice it was wet in the first place. Whereas other leathers, rain is not ideal. For example, with Swift leather, where is my bag? So I have one Swift bag. I love Swift leather because it takes to color really well. I think if you really want to showcase the color, Swift leather is one of the best leathers to choose. It's similar to Chanel lambskin. Like certain colors just look much better in Chanel lambskin, and it's, you know, Swift is actually a calf skin, but because it's a smooth grain and it's very soft, it actually looks a little bit more elevated compared to grainier leathers like Togo and Clemnce as well. But I don't know, I have actually got this a little bit wet and it was okay. But I have seen, for example, I saw in Japan a Swift Birkin 25 in red, and it looked like it had got really, really soaked, and the leather kind of looked like bubbly, and I think it's because it got really, really wet. So even with any Hermes bag, it is ideally good not to get them wet, but some leathers will be a little bit more resilient than others. But Swift, yeah, it is actually more durable than you think. I think a lot of people, for some reason, don't like Swift, and it tends to not hold value as much on the secondhand market compared to Togo and Clemnce in most styles, like even Birkins and Kellys, because it actually slouches really easily, and it can kind of go out of shape easier than other leathers. So if you overstuff your bag, if you just are really harsh on your bag, like very heavy-handed, it can kind of distort easier than like more structured leathers, or yeah, something like Togo or Clemnce. But I will say Swift is like one of my most favorite leathers because I think the colors look stunning in Swift. I used to have a granny green gypsy air which was in Swift, and the color was really bright and saturated. I also had a blue atoll Belize 27 in Swift, and that was also a really vivid color, and I always got compliments because the color was showcased really well in the Swift. And even colors like Rose Sakura, they often only do in Swift because that color just looks better in Swift than other leathers. You can get picotins and mini Evelyns in Rose Sakura and Clemnce, but often in Birkins and Kellys they'll only offer it in Swift because it just looks a little bit more elevated. So yeah, if you like that more clean, polished look, or even something a little bit dressier, like a Kelly pochette or something like that, or even a Constance can look amazing in Swift. I would recommend Swift because it just looks a little bit more elevated sometimes, and it's also really soft and flexible. So for example, with a bag like a Constance, sometimes in Epsom that can be quite rigid and boxy, but then if you get it in Swift, it can kind of mold to your body more and be a little bit more flexible. So Swift definitely has its benefits. It's a lot more malleable. It's super soft and luxurious to feel. It takes the color really, really well. It does scratch, but I find that it is easier to bag spa than Epsom leather. Apparently it does bag spa well. So if you're okay with a few scratches here and there, like this Lindy does have a few scratches, but it doesn't really affect the look of it too much. So yeah, I think Swift is a really underrated leather, but let me know what you think of it. I know some people really prefer to avoid it. Okay, another really popular leather is obviously Togo, and I really like Togo for its distinct veining. I know that not all, it kind of depends on bag to bag, but you'll see that particularly in Birkins and Kellys and Togo, some have strong veining and some do not, but I actually think the veining kind of adds to the authentic look of the leather. So this is a invert yucca, and you can see the color is quite vibrant as well. However, I think because of the grain, it does have a slight shadow to the color, just because of how the grain is. But the good thing about Togo is that it is still super soft and luxurious, similar to Swift, but obviously it has a grain, so it's much more durable with scratches. It also holds shape a little bit better than Swift as well. It's got a bit more structure to it. Yeah, it's really casual look, obviously. Great for everyday bags. One of my favorite leathers because it just, yeah, very durable. You will find that with Togo leather, it does sometimes get corner wear over time, but this can be fixed at the Hermes bag spa as well. I've got a lot of bags in Togo. Even my plume bag is in Togo leather down here, and this one is from the year 2000 and it's still going strong. And I don't know if you can see, it has a bit of veining in it as well. So Togo is like, yeah, just a very popular leather, probably one of the most popular leathers. And I think it was introduced in the late 2000s actually. So it's not like a vintage leather. Obviously, if you want that more vintage vibe, I would go for a box calf leather. Or even there is a few styles like leathers like Courchevel leather, which I have in my vintage Kelly 28. This Kelly is from 1991. Courchevel leather is very similar to Epsom actually, but I find that it has a little bit more of a shine to it and the grain is slightly different. Courchevel leather is also a very popular choice for vintage lovers because it holds the structure incredibly well. It does take the color quite well as well. Obviously Courchevel leather you'll only be able to get in limited colors because it was eventually discontinued and replaced with Epsom leather. But I think I've heard a lot of people who collect Hermes bags say they prefer Courchevel leather to the modern day Epsom. And I'm not sure why that is, but I will say for its age, this has really held up well. It has a slight more shine to it than Epsom. And yeah, I think Courchevel is quite a nice option. And sometimes with vintage bags, if you're not into the box calf, maybe consider Courchevel. You can also go for Gulliver leather, which was introduced before the Swift leather. So Swift leather is also a more modern day kind of leather. Less than 30 years old, and yeah, Gulliver leather is like the other option if you want a vintage bag. Also, of course, with vintage bags you can go for exotics. They've always done those, like ostrich and all that, but I think, you know, as time went by, Hermes introduced more and more leathers, and so now you've got like endless options to choose from. There are so many leathers to talk about, guys, but yeah, I'll just touch on the basics for now. With the Epsom leather, this was introduced later, I think in the early 2000s. This Kelly is actually from 2006. So I don't know if you guys can really tell the difference between Epsom and Courchevel, but I find that Epsom is a little bit more matte, and actually I find that it actually scratches quite easily. I don't know, I think that a lot of people think that Epsom is really indestructible, but I find that it actually, like mine does have scratches, and apparently these aren't easy to bag spa either. So sometimes Epsom bags I've seen aged not as nicely as box calf leather and that sort of thing, because it is an artificially pressed leather, but it does hold structure amazingly. So if you love your structured bags, you love something a little bit more polished, definitely go for Epsom. As I said, if you go for a Constance in Epsom, it will be a little bit more boxier and less squishable. Even this mosaic bag is in Epsom, and it's a very boxy shape and it holds the structure really well. Whereas if this was in like a softer leather like evercolor or Swift, you will find it will be a little bit more malleable. Evercolor is also a really nice option for Constance bags, because I find actually I'm not a huge fan of box calf, and then I don't really love the look of Epsom on a Constance because I actually think it looks a bit boxy. I do like my mosaic, but if I had to choose like a Constance, I would honestly go for evercolor leather, because evercolor leather has a slight grain to it and it has this beautiful shine, and it also takes to color really well. I also like that it feels softer on the body and it's not as rigid as Epsom. So yeah, you kind of have to decide, do you want like to have a bag that's more structured and hard, or do you want something a little bit more soft and malleable? And that will, I guess, influence what decision you make when it comes to choosing the right leather for you. If you want a structured Cellier bag, definitely Epsom is a great option. My most favorite leather is Chevre Mysore leather. This is goat skin leather. I find that it's super durable. It has like this iridescent shine to it. There's been many different types of Chevre over the years. There's Chevre de Coromandel, which has a bit more of a distinctive grain, and you can actually see the spine of the goat down the middle of the leather. This is, I believe, Chevre Mysore, which is a bit of a more modern day Chevre. It has a slight sheen to it. Then there's Chamkilla leather, which is really like shiny and really pretty. That one I love in the color Rose Pop. Oh my gosh, I'm like dead at that color, guys. Like that's probably one of my most dreamy combinations. And I think there's a few other types of Chevre as well, but I love Chevre because it's super duper lightweight. It has a slight grain to it. It does hold structure well, but it's not too rigid. And yeah, I just think it's a very durable leather. I do have two Bastia coin purses and a Kelvy card holder in Chevre, and they're super durable. I have got them wet and they've been totally okay. And Chevre looks amazing in smaller bags as well, like the mini Kelly, like this mini Plume. This mini bolide also I think really looks good in Chevre. It has this slight shine to it, and it sometimes looks a little bit dressier, which I like as well. So if I had to special order, for example, a Kelly 25, I would choose Chevre because it's also a less common leather to find than Epsom and Togo, but I think it's really underrated. So yeah, Chevre is one of my personal favorites for leathers. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. Some people think it looks a bit slimy, but I think it looks really nice and really, really pretty. You have Clemnce leather. Clemnce is one of my favorite leathers because it feels so thick and it has a really thick grain to it. It actually comes from a bull calf leather. So it's got larger grains. It's much slouchier compared to Togo, and it's actually a little bit heavier as well. So if you want a really slouchy Birkin, I would recommend Clemnce leather. However, it will be heavier. So if you want a lightweight Birkin, then you should go for Swift or Epsom because that's much more lightweight, but it will give a different look to your bag. Swift also is very slouchy, but I often see Swift in smaller bags. Sometimes I see it in bigger bags, but not as commonly as Clemnce leather. I love Clemnce leather in just very casual bags like the mini Lindy. I think it lends itself really well to the Clemnce. If you want something a bit more polished, go for the mini Lindy in Swift. That will give more of like a pretty kind of finish. I also love Clemnce in everyday bags like the Picotin, obviously. Really slouchy. I also feel like Clemnce takes to color really well. I think it looks really impressive, but I love the thick scrumptious leather, and I have a lot of bags in Clemnce actually. Even this Victoria bag is in Clemnce. I love the feel of the thick leather. Like it feels really substantial compared to Togo. I just love the feel of it. And you can get smaller bags in Clemnce like Birkin 25 and Kelly 25, but the structure tends to be a little bit easier to collapse than with Togo leather, which is why Togo tends to be slightly more popular than Clemnce with the Birkins and Kellys, but I do see huge appeal in Clemnce as well, and I personally really like it myself. This actually is Epsom leather as well, guys, but see how the Epsom looks different in different colors? Sometimes it looks a little bit more matte, and sometimes, yeah, it can just depend on the color and the combination. I even find sometimes with Clemnce leather, Sometimes I find Clemnce can look very, very shiny, like this Etude bag from 2009. And sometimes I find it can look quite matte depending on the color. So as I said, it depends on the color and the style. Sometimes the leather can look different, and probably it depends on the batch of the leather too. But I love when Clemnce has this shiny look to it. I think it looks very luxurious and and high quality. Obviously you can see how this bag has aged. It does have some heavy scuffing on the sides here. It's definitely become super slouchy as well. Whereas if this was in Epsom or even in a togo, it probably wouldn't slouch as much. Like this plume bag, the structure is completely different. But the togo still holds its structure really well in this construction. Finally, I do have Nonda leather. This is in the garden party. Usually I only see Nonda leather in the garden party, but let me know if you've seen it in other styles of bags. It's another really thick grained leather, super durable. I've got this wet multiple times and it's been very strong. It does sometimes lose structure a little bit, particularly the garden party here. I don't know why. If you don't overstuff your bags and if you keep them like just very pristine, the garden party will keep its structure, but I tend to use this quite a lot, and I actually bought it pre-loved, so it did have a bit of structure loss already, which I don't mind. But yeah, it's a very durable leather. It will scuff at the corners eventually, but it can be sparred as well. So yeah, Nonda is like a very casual leather. You can get the garden party as well, less commonly in Epsom. I have seen it in Epsom if you want a more structured looking garden party, but it's very uncommon. And then I've also seen the garden party in various canvas variations, which can look amazing, very casual and cool. And of course there's a new mini garden party, which I really love, but I'm trying to resist, guys. So yes, that's some of my most favorite leathers, I would say, that I have. Obviously you could go on forever about different exotics and so many other styles of leathers too, but I just wanted to touch base on some of the ones that I like, and let me know, guys, what are your favorite leathers from Hermes. And thanks for watching my video today. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys really soon. Bye!